Okay, we're live.
Okay, good morning. This is the notice meeting of the advisory committee of non-voting taxpayers. And we're ready to go. Let's go around our table and maybe we can introduce ourselves to the chief and take roll at the same time. Our guest is Chief Casper, and I'm Peter Halley, the chairman of the group, or the chair of the group. We have no. We've been shortened appropriately.
I'm Lynn Phillipsky. We met at the Wisconsin Civic Association. We were well received, so
Thank you.
pleasure to see you twice.
Good to see you again.
Kathy Baird, met before at the golf club, the secretary.
I'm Steve Perlman.
I'm Gary Beller. I saw you at the Grand Point Association a few weeks ago.
You gotta go
Thank you
out.
for being
I've been
there.
around.
You've
Yep.
seen everybody. Louis Pisano.
Michael Cody.
Gene Briskman.
Patty Doyster. Donna Martina.
And
Peter Pat.
we have a guest.
Peter McCausland.
Hi, how are you? Peter?
Nice to see you.
And so we have a quorum. Our group is authorized strength is 15, and we actually have 15. Although I think we're one or two short. One is in England and the other is someplace else in the United States today. And so we do that, and the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I move approval of the agenda.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Good, then we have approval of the minutes for our last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Second, any issue with the minutes, anybody? All those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Good, and now that brings us up to our guest speaker. We're very happy to have you. I don't think that we've had a police chief here in maybe the 8 to 10 years I've been involved in this group. And so you're a first for us. We have, city officials come and we learn something about them, and you learn something about us, and that's very good. I must say I spent a fair amount of time looking at Chief Casper's background, and it, I would take the whole meeting to go through it. This is a person who is not only a police officer and a police leader, but an academic, really. He's written 3 books, been through virtually every course I can imagine. Had the experience, I guess since 2015, you've been police chief, first in Northampton and now here. It turns out we went to high school about 21 miles apart. You were on Route 2. I was in Bermiston.
Right around the corner.
Yeah.
We played, our football teams probably played each other.
Yeah, well, I think back then, probably not, but probably in today's, because it was a long time ago.
I don't think you were contemporary.
Maybe a little over 50 years. So I understand the part of the country we come from and the great beauty of, especially Route 2 is just unbelievable. Mountains there. Sort of a little interested is how you came down here to sea level, but I'm glad that you are here. And I think with that introduction, why don't you tell us what you want to tell us about the police department, and I'm sure there are going to be a number of questions
Sure.
when we're finished.
Of course, yeah. Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I didn't know I was the first police chief who's been here in a long time, so nice to be here with you all. So yes, I am from the western part of the state. We were just talking a little bit about kind of the beauty of the Pioneer Valley, and it was a really great area for me to grow up in and to be a police officer in for 25 years. I was with the Northampton Police Department for 25 years, and that's where I came from. And I was chief there from 2015 through up until just the end of 2023, and then landed here in Nantucket. And how did I land here? Everyone always asks me, had I been here beforehand? And no, I had never been here prior to seeing the posting, although as soon as we saw it, my wife Melissa and I saw it, and Melissa is from Yarmouth, right across the way, so she's very local. We came out to the Cape and Islands quite a bit prior to applying. So what we did was we came out and we explored the island quite a bit on our bike paths, right? And got to know a lot of people just prior to applying to make sure the community would be a good fit. Did a lot of research online, which is very easy to do now. I watched a lot of select board meetings, which is a great way to get to know a community. It's a great way to get to know a community.
That's for
And
sure.
that didn't discourage you.
No, I have to tell you, actually, the select board meetings were, I learned a lot about what the issues are for the island, so we were watching last summer, so it was a lot of discussion about short-term rentals, rental cars, Baxter Road, erosion, lots of things were coming up. But to me, it's also very important to know how a community disagrees, right? Because of course, I think that's changed a lot over the last few years. We were just chatting a little bit of politics and things have changed. And so how do community members disagree? Do they do so respectfully? Is there space to disagree, but a community can still move through a problem? And that actually is what I saw in select board. So I come from a place with strong disagreement where meetings were a little bit different and sometimes not respectful of others. That was my experience. So I was looking to go to a place where I found something a little bit different. So I was very excited to come here. And I'm very much an outdoors person, so of course the island and all of its offerings with outdoor space and its commitment to preservation, that being built into the strategic plan, was something that was very attractive to me as well, and something that we've enjoyed quite a bit being out here as we explore the island. So that's just a little bit about me and how we landed here. And then as far as what I see here, now that I've been here for a while, I was also just saying it's good to finally get some things under my belt that I've heard about. Everyone, the Boston Pops is coming, Fagawi is coming, very big events here on the island that I know have a long history and have been really challenging on local resources. So I was curious and really wanting to move through those things to see how they were handled. And I have to tell you, the police department here is just exceptional. I don't say that because of my role there, but really exceptional sergeants and lieutenants that are doing a lot of the work of kind of keeping things organized. And of course, all of our officers who are here on the island, boots on the ground, doing the work that you see out there at all these events. So I feel very lucky to land in a place where under Chief Pittman's leadership, clearly he was here for a long time. He set the stage for a good internal culture of good teamwork, working together and taking good care of the community. One thing that's very different here in Nantucket is that all the police officers live here. And you don't get that everywhere you go. And I would never take that for granted here, but being a resident now, the people, they understand the community, they are their kids are in the schools, they're coaches, they're volunteers in other ways. They have other things they're doing on the island. So they're very involved and invested in the community. And you just don't see that everywhere anymore. A lot of times what you see is people coming in from the outside and policing another community, and then going back to kind of where they're from and where they feel more connected. And I think you get a different level of service when you have people who live there. So that is definitely something that is very important, I think, to the culture that we have within the department and the exceptional work that they do. That being said, I've talked about this before for those of you that have been in other meetings that I may have spoken at. Housing is a real issue. And we talk about it almost every day in some capacity. And the reason it's an issue, for those of you who are homeowners, most of you have owned a home or own a home. It's something that most people want to do in life. It's also a way to build your financial, equity and kind of have a life and have a family and get a dog and whatever else you want to do. And the reality is, with an average home price of $4 million and us having, you hire a 22-year-old employee who wants to come in and be a police officer here, we can put them into housing. I mean, our officers, just like other publics, this is true for DPW or for other people who work for town or whatever else. We have 4 adults living together in a home, sharing kitchens and bathrooms, and that's not a sustainable practice, in my opinion. And our folks do that and for a while, and it may seem okay when you're young and you may be open to doing that. Say, oh yeah, sure, it's fine, I'll live with roommates. But after a while, maybe you want to get married or have that house or whatever else you want to do, and that's really where we start to lose officers. So people, I think, love working for the department. I think they love the island. They like being here, but there's a reality to the fact that they want to buy a home, and they will never do that here. There's just it's not possible. with home prices the way that they are. So that is the biggest challenge for my department as well as other departments within town, you know, how do we overcome that? How do we address the housing situation for employees so that people want to stay for a long time? We don't want to have high turnover. When you have high turnover in municipal positions, you lose knowledge, you know, lose skills, and you're always you're retraining people. I'm new, so, you know, it takes a long time for me to learn my way, right? I came onto the island and like, it takes a long time to learn a job. And so,
Just one
yeah.
second. This was set messed up a little bit when we came in, we had problems and got logged in and so forth, but it will not get off of my face.
That's no problem for me.
I like to sit here so that people who are watching can see you.
If you would like me to, I will.
I just wanted everybody to know that.
Should I just try to turn this?
I don't know, it's usually on everybody and whoever's speaking, and I don't know why it's not doing that. It was malfunctioning when we got here and.
It's because it doesn't have.
It's not changing, it's really going off of this camera, this is the one it's using, it's not using that.
Maybe we can just turn that.
Do that.
It's fortunate that you have a uniform on, so people know, you know, you are it.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's the biggest challenge that we're really facing, and that's something that the town is very committed to. You've heard the town manager talk about it. You've seen it in the strategic plan. It's very much written into budgets. Like, it's a common topic of conversation. We just don't want to have high turnover amongst our municipal employees and have people leaving us, especially when they like really want to be here. They're really committed to the community and want to be here. But we need to work on making it a place that they can be and can stay for a whole career, for a 30 or 35 or 40-year career. So that's the number one thing I really see within the department. And as far as what I see in the community, as far as some of the challenges that are out there from a policing perspective, without a doubt, we talked a little bit, because whenever we talk about bicycles and traffic and speeding and all those sorts of things, definitely, you know, some concerns here on the island with all the different modes of transportation that are here. We have wonderful bike paths that have been developed and committed to over the years, which again, you don't find everywhere, and they're fantastic here. I enjoy them myself. But we just have a lot of people on everything, on our roadways, on our sidewalks, and on our bike paths. And part of the challenge is a lot of people that are on those things are not from here. So we have a lot of visitors or new people, so they're looking around, trying to figure out where to go. They're on their phones, trying to follow maps, and they don't understand some of the customs and cultures of how we kind of operate on the island. Driving here is unique, you know, as far as letting everybody go everywhere, and which is okay. That's the culture on the island, but it's different for other drivers who might be new and are trying to figure out kind of how to get around. So definitely some challenges there. I have concerns about, you know, the number of bike accidents that we see, about some speeding, about collisions that we're seeing around the island. Yeah, lots of challenges around traffic and safety for all road users, you know, from pedestrians to cyclists to drivers. So definitely I'm seeing that. And then without a doubt, you know, mental health on the island is also a challenge. And what we see there is a real challenge with lack of local resources for a long-term solution. So we have Fairwinds on island now that just has new leadership, as Roberto Santamaria has just taken over as the executive director there. So I'm looking forward to working with him. But those are the mental health experts that they have that can come out and provide services to people are just crisis clinicians, short-term services. So when you have someone who's really in crisis, and maybe they would be best served by going to longer care. We don't have that care here. So then we have to try to find people services off island. And there's real challenges around that. If you're talking about a 15-year-old who needs services, it's just such a strain on a family. Not only is it hard to find the bed, find someone a place to go off island where they're going to go get those services, but just imagine the family, if you want to visit that person every day, or, you know, you don't have transportation when you get off the island, it becomes a financial burden and a real challenge to try to negotiate all that. And I think sometimes that may be factored into decisions that are made as far as, you know, whether or not you have someone go and get services, because it just becomes very hard to figure out how that could happen logistically. So on-island resources for that are tough, as well as just immediate crisis response. I mean, we call to have like a mobile crisis responders. This is a very common program around the country where maybe you have co-responders or you have mobile crisis responders that come out to a scene if our officers get called. And someone may be feeling suicidal or, maybe dealing with depression or anxiety, and we need a clinician on scene. And we do call for that. That is our practice, but someone is not always available for that either. So that makes it tough. Historically in the world of policing, police have been really the ones that have had to provide services where we really, that's not what we should be providing services for. So then when we go out and we see someone who's in crisis, you only have so many tools in the tool belt to deal with the situation. So best practice is really having mental health people who can go out into the field. So those are a couple of the things that I'm seeing. I don't want to talk too much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. But overall, really an exceptional department. Very pleased to be there. Really good people. And my concern is just keeping it that way, keeping our great people there and succession planning for the future so that there's leaders in the future to continue to take over for positions. Because in those new positions as they open, you're going to want people who have some years under their belt and some time. And what we have is a department that the top half of, many of them own homes, the bottom half really doesn't. And by top and bottom, I just mean by newer people, junior people, not by rank. I'm in that bottom half as well. I don't own a home here either. So people who have been hired, over the last few years are less likely to own homes. So as people in the top part who have been there a long time who own homes retire, then you have less stability in your workforce because we just have people that are moving around a lot, and that makes it very challenging. For them, it's not a good quality of life to be moving around a lot and to not have the stability of a home. So that's my overview of the police department. Do you have any questions that I can answer for you?
Maybe we just go around.
Yeah, I'll be the first one to open my mouth. Domestic violence. What role do you play and what kind of backup service do you have to help your police officers in situations like that?
Yep, thank you for that question. So around domestic violence, again, where you wouldn't think that housing is involved, housing plays a role. Because the reality is you may be in your house and you want to not be in the relationship, you don't want to be in the relationship and you don't have anywhere to go. There's nowhere to get out, right? And that's atypical. In other communities, you might have other resources to get to or other housing options. So what we have sometimes on the island is people who are separated, broken up, but living together. That can contribute to some family conflict. Sometimes children are involved. So even if you might want to get out of the house and then maybe you have a housing option in Hyannis, if you have children involved, that makes it very complicated if they're going to school and going back, and it's just very hard. So that's a way housing plays into domestic violence here on the island. Our officers are very well trained around how to handle domestic violence. They would go to a call, offer restraining orders, see if a crime occurred, make arrests if they need to. But on island, we have a safe place. Are you familiar with that organization? Yeah, a wonderful organization on the island. I can't say enough good things about the people who work in there and the work that they do. So if someone needs a restraining order or has questions and needs to talk to someone, our officers just call them and they send someone right to the station and sit with them for all the time it takes to make sure they understand what their options are and to get them those resources.
Can you get a restraining order immediately?
Yep, you can call an on-call judge. Yep, 24 hours a day. It's a temporary order that only lasts a short time. Then you have to go to court to
Yeah,
get a longer order.
that's
But
what
yep,
I'm
yep, we
curious.
can get that.
I've just a question, and it may not be applicable down here, but I know in Wellesley, we never really had a drug problem that they were talking about until about 3 years ago, and fentanyl just exploded.
Mhm.
Where does Nantucket stand in terms of the fentanyl issue, and how do we deal with it
Mhm.
being isolated 30 miles at sea?
Without a doubt, the isolation makes it challenging to deal with the drugs that are on the island because the way you deal with drugs on an island is, well, the way you normally would deal with drugs, lots of different ways, right? You do a lot of education, you partner with but at the end of the day, there's an enforcement component that needs to be done. And that enforcement component often involves a lot of people. So just for instance, if we're gonna, honestly, it's just the way it's done is we may have an undercover person buying drugs from someone that needs to be observed. They need to be followed and tailed, and we have to do it multiple times. It's a big deal to do these things. And we need outside resources. That's very common. Where I came from, we had a task force of a whole bunch of people. So when we were doing these operations, everybody would come in, do the operation, and then go home. But of course, out here, there are real challenges, and we're gonna have members of a task force come out, which we can do, right? And if it gets late and then the ferries don't run, they all need to be put up, and it's expensive. And just even the logistics for them even getting out here and timing and cars, once they get out here, are they gonna be driving our cars? Are they bringing over a car? All those things I've never had to deal with those before, right? So those are real challenges, but it doesn't mean we're not working on it, that we don't work on those cases. We do. It's just a heavier lift than it would be in other places. Do we have fentanyl here? Absolutely. You know, fentanyl is cut into a lot of other drugs. So whether it be heroin or cocaine, it's, you know, in it. And we definitely have a problem here with it, just like any other community. In my experience here, what I see is a pretty consistent level of use with other communities. We have overdoses, you know, as do other communities. What I see here more is just a bigger concern with alcohol than I've seen in some other communities. So as you may have noticed, a lot of impaired operation, a lot of drunk driving, crashes caused by that. Our officers are doing a great job. They're really out there pulling people over and arresting them for impaired operation. But so we have a lot of alcohol issues on the island, and of course that's mixed in with domestic violence and some of the other things I talked about, mental health. So yeah, all those things are here, they're everywhere. We're not safe from any of those things just because we're out here on the island.
Thank you.
What about manpower? It just seems like, you know, there's so many issues that you're addressing, but there's minor things. There's bicycle issues that the previous police chief, I believe, said, well, we can't police that.
Mhm.
That we just don't have the manpower.
Mhm.
We have gridlock downtown, and it would just take, you know, one or two officers, you know, to direct foot traffic or whatever, but you don't seemingly have manpower. Is that just my perception, or is that?
We absolutely don't. And so again, oddly enough, housing plays into that in a number of ways. We have 41 sworn police officer positions. I'm one of those, right? So that's everybody from the chief to newest officers. That's all of us. But right now, we have one vacancy, so okay, 40, but about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of those are people who are in training. They're in the police. We have a couple in different police academies. We have 3 in the field training program. So even though on paper, it may look like those positions are filled because we're paying people, because we pay people to go to the academy, we pay them when they're in field training. They're not here. They're not providing a police service directly that's a regular officer. So that's really the challenge. And when you have all that turnover, right, then you constantly have a number of those 41 positions that are basically training positions. And so they will be, like, until we figure out a way to help with the housing situation, so people aren't leaving to go to other departments, we will always have some of these positions that are in training. So that is the challenge that I see. It's like, yes, we have 41 positions, but they're not.
If you had all 41 in manpower
Mhm.
available, is that enough?
If everyone wasn't in training, that would be fine, but it's just never, that's never gonna happen, honestly.
Just
Yep.
to follow up on
Yep.
that point, though, I know you have I think it's a police department that runs that marvelous program for college students.
Yes.
Sort of a public safety.
Yep.
You see them, lovely kids
They're
in
lovely.
college, like working as public safety officers. They give out
Mhm.
traffic tickets, and I've talked to a few of them over the summers. Would it not be possible to use some of them for traffic direction downtown, if that were an issue? I don't know.
Yeah, so we have about 40 community service officers,
That's
so, right, CSOs. So historically, we had special police officers, people with police power who came onto the island in the summertime and provided actual police services. They could make arrests and do all those things. Laws have changed with police reform and everything else, so that program is no longer there. And now we have these about 40 each year come onto the island. They wear the gray shirts. You see them biking around sometimes on, they have the cross straps and.
A lot of them are college kids. like
Yeah, a lot
doing
of them, it's their
internships.
summers in
Yeah.
college. Most of them are, yep.
Yeah.
Great program for us and a huge resource. Honestly, we would never be able to handle all the calls that we get in the summer without them. They can't do any enforcement of like police enforcement, but they write parking tickets without a doubt. So.
I'm just saying, if
Set up
traffic
front,
direction
that's pretty
downtown
good.
is something that you need help with, then isn't that something they could be put to?
Yeah, I honestly, that's not gonna resolve, I mean, it's not gonna resolve, having a CSO then pull them from doing their other duties, because they do have duties of responding to medical calls and writing parking tickets, and you're gonna pull them and put them in an intersection all day long, that's not gonna cut it, there's a lot of people in cars here. So having an officer at all the places where we would need them in order to kind of keep traffic moving more smoothly, is then we wouldn't be doing the other things that they're all doing.
The thing is with, our gridlock, I was on my bike downtown and it was totally from one end to the other,
Mhm.
total gridlock, but it was only because of ferries. And that, that you could squish their schedules down to an hour here and an hour on this street and get the pedestrians to stop the traffic through, and you've got it easy. I mean, this is a tourism place, and gridlock doesn't speak well to them.
It does not, there's a lot of cars here and a lot of people all in at the same time, and the way the ferry comes into downtown, particularly the High Line in that area, it's just not designed for that. And so we have a number of CSOs already assigned to keep traffic moving there, that's what they're doing, without them, that would even be worse gridlock. So their job is to make sure that when people pull up, they get them out very quickly, I mean, you can't park down there and just idle waiting for someone to come off or whatever else, they will move you along.
We have,
So,
we have a plan to actually build a flyover.
yeah, yes.
And solve the problem that way.
Yeah, I have definitely been perplexed by that problem as well and looked at it and talked to, some of the great staff that I have, and that they're, because of where it comes in and the infrastructure there. I mean, you're bringing in 450-ish people every couple of hours, right? And it's too small.
But
You know?
it seemed to me it's the foot traffic at those strategic times
Yeah.
that keep the traffic from flowing. If you
Yeah.
could just get somebody to keep that out
Mhm.
of the picture, you'd have more flow.
Yeah, I hear that, it's tricky, yep.
Yeah, I was wondering, as you're becoming more familiar with our community, and you're settling in, do you have any thoughts about the housing issue for your people, for your staff? Have you, now that you're learning the landscape, do you have any thoughts about how you'd be able to?
You know, we have a housing office, and I'd be best to tell you that, like, they can talk about all the strategies that they are thinking about as far as dealing with housing. All I can tell you is we just desperately need it, right? So that's what I can say. I'm not one to speak on things that I don't know what all the hurdles are as far as why we can't do X, Y, and Z, and I wouldn't want to say that. But I'm sure they would be happy to talk about housing if you ever invited or wanted to invite people from housing here. They could answer those. And yeah, they'd be best positioned to do that. Yeah, of course.
Pam,
Oh, yeah, I was just curious. I know there's a lot more social media now with like Daybreak Nantucket and Current and all this. It seems like there's a huge escalation in traffic accidents, cars going off the road, people hitting each other. Is this just because we're hearing about it more, or is it really increasing, and how much does the alcohol piece have to do with that? I'm just-
Yeah, I would encourage you to go on, mass.gov actually keeps a great website on collisions, and you can, if you go on there, I think it's called Impact, that's the acronym for it, and you can just go on and put in Nantucket and look at a map.
Yeah, because we've never
And-
heard of it as much as we seem to now.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been here long enough to be able to speak about really long-term trends, and I'm always cautious of talking about like the last few years because of COVID. It really impacted so many numbers that I don't like to say things are going way up or things are going way down, because what happened in 20 and 21, honestly, I would just kind of throw those out the window. A lot of establishments closed and just everything was different. But we have had a lot of accidents historically as well, from what I've looked back, but you can answer that question yourself by really logging in there, and you can look at 10 years back and just look at the exact number that we've had, and it includes a breakdown of whether it's serious injury, bicycle involved, right, minor accidents, and you can look at a map of where they occur. And we're definitely looking at all those things now, because we've, a lot of minor accidents, but the minor accidents are accidents, and
I've
they're.
noticed a new sign go up about a curve out on Pulpus Road, and it's an area where a lot of cars go off the road, kept speeding late at night. So I thought it was interesting when I was driving home and I went, whoa, there's like a brand new sign there.
Oh, the dangerous
warning
curve
people."
sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple go off the road there.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and that's what's handy about looking at data is we're able to use data to inform where we need to make changes,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a component about traffic safety that's just education, where we tell people you need to wear a helmet, or you need to drive slowly, or wear your seatbelt, or not use your phone. But then there's also an element of just engineering and design, and how are you warning drivers as they're approaching, and how is the roadway designed, and does it need to be adjusted to make it safer? So we do both of those things when we're looking at data.
People riding bikes on downtown sidewalks, and then also the issue of the bike paths and electric bikes, and can you talk about either of those?
I can, yes. So our CSOs do know to, when they see people on sidewalks, to get them off sidewalks. Again, it's very tricky because a lot of people who are here visiting. So you know, you do that education and you'd like to think that you can build it into the culture and what everybody knows, but then you have new people coming who don't know.
I mean, with Young's and Nantucket Bike Shop and Cook's and all those places, I mean, are they partners in that?
Yeah, actually, I just talked to Mike Burns, who's the transportation person on the island, and he works a lot on, he actually is responsible for the Brain Bucket program to try to get more people to wear helmets. And it's a conversation that he and I had about partnering a little bit more with bike shops and, you know, educating people about the helmet bylaw and about some of those safety issues. So definitely something we're keeping an eye on. And e-bikes it's hard because, you know, we have all talked a lot about traffic and gridlock. So at the end of the day, you do want people riding bikes. It's a good thing for the island, but people need to do so and understand the laws and the rules, right? And so it's finding that balance. So please ride your bike, but also please ride it safely. And we certainly have a problem on the island with people not wearing helmets. I see that very frequently. Going the wrong way on one-way streets. Yep, and that is something like we're aware of. And some weaving in and out of traffic, just being unpredictable. I just did an interview with a local media source. And that was one of the things that I said, that bicyclists really should be predictable. You should, if they're riding, you want to know what they're doing. They're not going to zip out and unexpectedly do something that is not good. You know, so people need to be predictable. And some cyclists, you know, are not. So how do we work on that? And how do we do education? So our school resource officer in the schools, she's fantastic. She's a certified bike officer and a bike education officer. So she does a lot in the schools to try to make sure that young people are understanding what the rules are. She was out in Wisconsin a little while ago doing a bike safety day and trying to teach kids, you know, this is the way to ride safely. So we hope that as those kids age, you know, with that kind of foundation of understanding the rules, that it will make some improvements, but it's very difficult without a doubt.
Gary.
Thank you for being here. We appreciate your comments. A couple of things. First, I'm not surprised that there are more, I wouldn't be surprised if the statistics show us there are more accidents because there are more cars and more, and with people having such difficulty relying on the ferry, people are figuring out, I have to leave cars here. So more and more cars are here, and obviously, you know, in July and August, our infrastructure is unable to deal with that. But there was one issue that we've been struggling with, that town has been struggling with, and I'm curious about how you folks handle it. And that is the fact that during the high season months, it's impossible to get your car inspected. So the question is, what do your folks do when you see cars who don't have inspection stickers? I know many people who've spent hours and hours trying to get to the inspection station. You know, and I've talked to Don Allen, the people at Don Allen, Eric, and they throw up their hands, you know. So we somehow seem unable to get another facility on the island to do car inspections. So it means a lot of people must be riding around with stickers that are not proper. What do you folks do about that? Do you give tickets out or what?
So you can be stopped, of course, for having an expired inspection sticker. I have not, people have asked me if I've told officers, do you tell them to not write tickets for that? No, there's no directive for them. They use discretion. As I said, most of our officers live here on island. They have cars too, right? And so we all understand the problem. So I think I can't tell you that you definitely will or won't get a ticket if you get pulled over, but I would say our officers have discretion and understand that that is a challenge on the island. So excuse me, for year rounders, what I have done with my car is get it inspected, even though it wasn't due to get a new month on it, even though it was well before, but then I'll be inspecting in the off season. And I know that's not practical for everybody, but that's a workaround. You know, it's unfortunately, you just have to pay one extra inspection and then you can,
Do you
have
know,
it in the off
do you know if the state has mobile inspection that they do, where they can bring?
I can't speak to that as far as whether they do that for, you know, members of the public. I don't know. I don't know. It's a problem.
Yeah, so I'm guilty as charged, Gary.
Yeah.
I've been pulled over for the inspections during, it's a, you know, prosecutorial discretion issue. And it's also a blood pressure issue. And it's also a, keep your hands on the steering wheel, you know. But I think it was last year, it was one of the years where they had problems, because remember, not only do we only one inspection station, but we only have, I guess, 2 inspection guys.
And one of them was
One
sick for a while, I remember.
And so it was the year that it was almost impossible to get your car. So I got pulled over, you know, in the twilight, which is more dramatic. And, but, you know, I'm very polite, just more of a reminder, and, you know, I couldn't say I'm on my way to the inspection station.
You were certain, you were certain.
It was an appropriate sort of thing. I was obviously out of sorts because I didn't have the inspection done. And the course, you know, they had my license plate and you could see I didn't have my inspection done. And it was a matter of communication. It was just a reasonable communication.
Yeah. Oh, Peter, I
hope
have a
that's the way it's typically handled. But I have just sort of 3 questions that maybe one of the things, in thinking about all the traffic and your CSOs and whatever, one of the things I think that came up with Chief Pittman probably in a year or 2 before he resigned is the challenge of the change in civility amongst the population, that people just are a lot less civil than they used to be. And that's got to put a lot of pressure on your force, and also, you know, because downtown, when somebody is doing something they probably shouldn't be doing, they don't want to be told that they're not doing it. And how it's sort of off island, on island education of just being tolerant, the issue of, you know, traffic and all the rest. So one of the good things I've seen about traffic and driving in Nantucket is people yielding the right of way, you know, and when they don't have to yield the right. Just, we're all living together and we need to be more polite. I mean, we can't get that message out. I'm just wondering, it's a sort of friction that somehow needs to be tamped down. So maybe that's not a question.
Certainly.
The other 2
Not
are,
just here,
you know,
but-
are issues with crimes against property. That's, you know, we're not here a lot of it here, and so far it's been, you know, not heard of a lot of break-ins and that sort of thing. And then one of our popular issues is noise. And in the past, we found the police department, you know, really not very enthusiastic to deal with noise. And we have very bad noise regulations that are somewhat unenforceable. Or very enforceable. Do you have any views? First of all, how are we doing with crimes against property? And secondly, you must get a lot of noise complaints, a lot of which you just can't do anything about. There's no statute.
So 2 questions, the one on property. So, very low amounts of property crimes here on the island. I mean, what I see is occasional property crimes that are often the result of poor choices made while under the influence of alcohol. So that's often what I see, right? Something broken or tipped over or whatever else, but very, very low property crime, very low theft, very good. I saw something actually yesterday on social media with someone asking about higher theft, but what's being reported to us, very low. The second part, noise, our officers actually, they can and do something. And if you looked at our log for noise complaints, you'll see officers sent. And at this point, just the old fashioned way of saying, hey, we got a noise complaint. And usually people they turn it down, not always. And sometimes we get a second call back, right? And that does happen. But I think generally speaking, they do a really good job of trying to deal with a party that's run too late and knocking on a door and asking people to quiet down, and usually have reasonable success with that. We have unique, very close together housing because, especially in some areas in town particularly, where I live, I hear people on a Friday and Saturday night sometimes with louder parties. It's just kind of the nature of living in a closer, more dense neighborhood. But I do think we deal with it as best we can.
I think you do a great job of it. Recently, I read that this issue about the damage to the African Meeting House is coming up again after 6 years, which brings up the whole question about how the police department deals with issues related to racism and Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, which I know isn't a major issue on the island, but how is the department trained to deal with those kinds of issues?
So when police reform passed in Massachusetts, there was a lot built into that really required particular types of training. Fair and impartial policing is a training that all police officers take across the Commonwealth that learn about bias policing, what it is, how to avoid it. It's also built into the foundational training at the academy now too. So when we have a new recruit come out of the academy, they have already had a good amount of training around this issue, which really you didn't have a lot of that before. So there's some good additions in there to even talk about it as an issue, to understand how it's impacting different communities. And as you said, here on the island, I can't think of the last time when we had something like that reported to us here. So luckily it's not something that happens a lot, but we have very thorough checks and balances internally that would be very attentive to any issue like that came up, and any issues would go immediately into our detective division, to require long-term follow-up and see what happened and put a case together as we would any other crime. They're thorough professional investigators, and I think that's the expectation today. That's my expectation, and that's what I see in our department.
Sort of following up on that, you mentioned working with schools. And I'm curious if you could expand on that, because in the past, for example, talking about there have been issues at school with regard to bias issue and of course, drugs, alcohol. These are opportunities to try to take care of this stuff, hopefully early and educate these kids. But I'm just curious how much that power you're putting into that elsewhere.
So we have two positions for school resource officers in the schools, and we have one filled. So because of our staffing issue that you guys asked about already, we haven't been able to fill that second position. So that is very hard, because I think when people think of school resource officers, their vision is one thing, and they think that maybe police are in the school going around looking for crime and locking up kids and opening lockers. It's just not at all what an SRO does. An SRO is really a resource for kids and for school administrators. I don't think people understand how many times school administrators have to deal with, honestly, crimes, like whether it's, bullying incidents or, like sextortion, or, if you naked pictures of others that you're then threatening with, and those things lead to major mental health issues, sometimes suicide, and I mean, there's a lot really built into that. Questions that kids are dealing with really difficult circumstances at home, domestic violence, or, other issues, substance use in the home, that they're crimes and they need help and resources. So the school resource officer is a resource. It's built into their title for both the school staff and the kids. They focus a lot on education on some of the things I talked about with bicycle safety. And education on making good decisions, on a wide variety of issues, right? So our school resource officer is probably one of our busiest as far as report writing and conducting investigations, and not that are going to lead to arrests of kids. That's not the goal. I don't think our SRO has arrested a child. if ever, maybe once, I don't, very rarely. So that's not the goal of the SRO, and they are so critical because they build those early relationships with police. And I know that our SRO, like when kids go on to become young adults, they have a great relationship. You know, they'll follow up and kind of keep in touch with them and be able to answer questions. So a resource really beyond their time in the public education system here on the island. So I hope to be able to fill that second spot at some point. I think it's very important to do that, and maybe someday we'll be fully staffed and be able to get that filled.
A follow-up question to the education. I understand that we can educate the full-time citizens of Nantucket in the school system, but how do we go about educating people who come over for the day? Or are there other examples, whether it be, and I know the Vineyard is an awful example to use for Nantucket, but are there other coastal communities that have this same problem? How do they do it? Because my experience driving on Nantucket is the local people are actually quite good about moving out of the way and, you know, yielding where they're supposed to. It's the people who come down for, you know, a week's rental and they don't know what they're doing wrong. And how do we get to those people? And can we realistically expect to get to?
It's really partnering with, right, where are they getting their mode of transportation that they're on, a bike shop, a car rental shop, or whatever else. And it's developing relationships with those entities and talking, really identifying what the issues are and what people need to be educated on when they're going out on whatever mode of transportation, be it a moped or bicycle or whatever else. So I think there's an avenue that it's absolutely challenging, without a doubt.
I think another way would be through realtors, because a lot of folks who rent for a week or two rent through the real estate community. So they could have a whole thing about, here's what you do on Nantucket.
They do that in Wisconsin. Every renter gets a sheet of what the noise rule is, where you ride your bike. But with the advent of Airbnb and VRBO, you lost that. So
Right.
the STR issue creates a secondary problem of how do you educate someone who's doing it online, comes for 3 days, and they don't really care.
Maybe the steamship authority is another avenue, because they get their cars over here on the boat,
Yeah.
right?
You've got a captive audience, and I've not been on one of the steamship boats for a couple of years now, or the Highland. But I do have this recollection of the television on these things, and maybe some sort of, you know, 3 minute,
Welcome
5
to
minute
Nantucket.
Soon.
public service announcement. Going to-
They're showing this.
Well, maybe it could be, you know, just 3 of the things that are really aggravating, people, like, don't step out in the crosswalk without looking first, and, I don't know what they would be, or the bike paths.
We used to have something occasionally, and in order for us to get the public's attention, there has to be a massive amount of publication of the rules of the road.
Yeah.
You know, and it used to be done, used to see it occasionally in the Inky. These days, it ought to be done by the Inky, it ought to be done by the Steamship Authority, it ought to be done by all of these online, the current, and all the, we just have, the only way to do it is to really bombard all of the media sources that people turn to with these rules that apply to people who are going to be driving or biking or something on the island of Nantucket, and we're not doing it. And it's easily doable.
Do a good job.
It's easily doable.
Things, and everybody's watching them get yelled at in Wisconsin for all sorts of things, and they're very calm about reiterating, this is why I'm speaking to you about where you're parking, we're watching the pedestrian go the wrong way, the bicyclists go the wrong way in the rotary. They are very educational. We just wish there were more of them, but then you have a housing issues.
Indeed. Ready for me, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to bring this back just a little bit. My biggest concern with traffic really has to do with the safety part of it. I feel like you're gonna have a very difficult problem, whether it's the police, the fire, any emergency rescue, because of the road congestion. It's difficult for you to get where you need to be in an emergency. And like, to me, that is the biggest thing that we have. To me, I'm a healthcare person. I see a real problem when we have total gridlock on Nobodere Farm or Old South Road, and then someone has an emergency and you have to get to them. So I did bring that up with Libby a little bit. We threw out there, like, maybe there has to be an access road for all the workers to get out in the morning that isn't on Old South. Maybe we need to rethink flows of the day-to-day traffic, especially during
So,
tourist season, but it terrifies me if I hear a fire rescue or an ambulance or something like that, and you just see that, and people don't pull over. People just sit there in the gridlock because they're so focused on getting where they need to be versus making room for a police officer, an emergency vehicle. I just wondered what your take was on, is there a way to solve that? Can you and Mike Burns solve that problem?
I mean, the infrastructure is the infrastructure.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, and I think part of the uniqueness and wonderfulness of our community is the way our roadways are, and it's lovely. It's a special place, right? We all talk about that when we think about Nantucket. It doesn't have some of the newfangled things yeah, you know,
Right.
or really wide breakdown lanes
No.
and all those things. And it's part of the charm of the community without a doubt. And I think something that's protected, and I understand why it is protected. You know, are there some challenges? Absolutely. I mean, there's always challenges with any community. What I would say is, like, with our CSOs, which really are wonderful. You know, if they have, a number of times this season, they had to get down to the High Line for someone on the boat having a medical emergency in the midst of what we just talked about.
yeah.
Right? So what do? They open it up. They're able to, they know right what to do. They open it up and they tell dispatch, this is the route to come in. That we've opened it, and they can drive right up on the brick.
So
right?
they're in communication
So-
with dispatch and they can help.
Yes,
you
everybody
through
has a
those.
radio,
That's
and
good to
so
know.
if dispatch gets a call for medical, they immediately call those CSOs in that area and say, we need to get an ambulance there, and they immediately know where to go and how to stop it, and they've been able to access it. Is it stressful and busy? Yeah, it is. There's hundreds of people there. Some people impaired, drivers who don't know where they're going. There's things, you know, but like, they do a good job and they're able to do it. So I think it's something that our emergency responders have adjusted to. And I don't know a great solution.
No, I mean, it's gonna
for
take
that.
a while to get a solution.
Sure, but let's do this last question or observation, whatever.
just one last question, I guess, on the issue of traffic safety. I know, our road is, has become, because of all the congestion, we live near a very busy road, and so our road has become a very popular sort of cut through for, some traffic, and which often there's been conversation among the neighbors that we're extremely concerned about the high speed at which unfortunately, it's usually local people because they're the ones who know the shortcut, right? But I mean, we have an enormous number of trucks flying down our road at a very high rate of speed. And we have a lot of young children, you know, living on this road. So we're getting really concerned.
What road?
It's Wayne Street. So we're just adjacent to Quaker.
That's a cut through street.
I know. That's the problem.
Yep.
So my question is this, we've been wondering about, like, can we get speed bumps? There are speed bumps on some roads in Nantucket, particularly clearly ones that are frequently used as cut throughs. And how would we go about petitioning, or how would we go about requesting that we put a couple of speed bumps on our road?
Mike Burns.
Mike
So,
Burns.
So you
Mike
can
Burns?
email Mike
Yeah.
Burns, and Mike, what Mike will do, I mean, this is the thing. What Mike will do is he'll want to collect speed data from the road to determine when, and what kind of speeding problem there might exist on the road. And then be able to come up with a recommendation. Speed bumps, speed tables are probably what you see in most places. A speed table goes up, kind of flat across the top and then down.
Yeah.
So, you know, a speed bump is kind of harsh. You have to slow down. It could be 5 or 10. You probably don't want that.
So I'd be fine with it.
You don't, you don't want them. But speed tables do the job. They slow people down. The impact they have in a neighborhood, some people don't understand, is that when we put those in, every truck that goes over it with anything in their bed, any landscape truck, any box truck, is gonna be very loud. So you may want it, you may not want it. I'm just putting that out there, that I've definitely had those installed in areas, and then the neighbors complain, and we've actually taken it back out. They'd rather have the speed than the noise from the truck. So tough call, but that's a conversation, you know, to ponder if they're warranted for the road. And I don't know if they are or not. I'm familiar with the street, but Mike Burns would be your contact to say, hey, can you look at this street? We think we may have a problem.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, real last question.
I will be real quick. At one point in time, the large rotary, there were signs that said, get off your bike and walk it across the street. They ride right into the street. And that's as bad as a kid running into the street. Maybe we can do something about getting the signs put back.
On the
It's the
rotary,
large rotary.
yeah, the large rotary, and they were at every crosswalk.
Yep, they're at every crosswalk. They would say to people, get off the bike, walk the bike across the street. That's the way it was years ago. You get people that are here on bicycles, they think that, they're gonna stop for me. They go right out into the middle of the street.
But they bikes have the right of way.
They have the right of way, but so does the pedestrian then to run into the street.
They do, and they use caution. I mean, it takes both to use caution here. I'm guilty, I ride my bike there. I'm careful, what bikers need to do is to make sure that they have visibility with the automobile, so there's hand traffic. My experience by and large has been that it works. And then people know that the rotaries are the place where you have.
That's where they should get off their bikes and walk it across the street.
I don't think you'd have to be able to require.
So you'd have to develop laws, I guess, to take away the absolute right of way, if that's what you're claiming. The bikes have an absolute right of way.
They have to share the road, they share the road, and then, that's a share, it's not one way or the other.
I'm not against sharing the road. I think it's fine.
So I want to thank Chief for your presentation and for
Putting up with this.
being with us and having this.
The most
discussion.
questions I've ever had at a meeting. I'm happy to answer.
I say that two answers. If you want to answer your transfer problem, come to Pilgrim Road. Don't pave your road.
By the way, half of Wind Road is among the worst roads on the island because of the big potholes. The other half is where you
They
live.
don't go.
That slows it down a little bit.
I know.
Much through the unpaved.
We're actually here complained about Main Street 50 years ago. Somebody said to me, wait a minute, it's like that because you don't want you speeding.
But,
Put it in
you know,
cobblestone.
a lot of people live through this in other communities and, it's hard to resolve all these problems.
Yeah.
But
Working together.
the first thing is trying to light up.
Absolutely. One thing I would say, just to wrap up, is that I think every meeting I've sat in like this, where I've met with different neighborhoods, is that traffic, speeding are one of the number one issues that I hear about, bicyclists and all that. So definitely it's something that's on our radar. We're talking now about how we can use our limited resources to target some of these problem areas. I'm a person who, I like data. I like to know that, all right, you say they're speeding on your street. Let me go see if there really is speeding on your street. And it's not that it's no disrespect to people, but sometimes just roads are very narrow and it feels like cars are moving faster through them than they really are. But maybe there's not a speeding problem. If it's not a speeding problem, it doesn't mean there's not a safety problem, like I'm not right. And then if there's a safety problem, how is that dealt with? So it's not that we're trying to maybe it's not a speeding issue. There's something else with it, maybe sight lines, visibility, whatever else it may be. So when we approach these issues, I like to look at it with a data-driven approach. That's what we're kind of looking at within the department now, as I'm trying to kind of fine tune some of the high priorities for me within the department, and traffic safety is certainly one of them. We're just trying to figure out how to use what we have to best approach that. So your issues and your conflict are not different than I've heard in any meeting. So I certainly understand that.
I would just like to make a comment. Before you came today, I heard a lot of wonderful things about you. People said, oh, we've heard, you would speak and so forth. I agree. Thank you so much.
All right, I'm gonna go enjoy the day. It's a neat day. It's beautiful out there. Thank you all so much. And if you ever have any other questions, really feel free to email me and I'd be happy
Thank
to
you.
respond.
Thank you.
All right, good to see you all. Right, nice to see you.
Okay, so I need to move over.
Hi, nice to see you.
Is he just fine about it?
Yeah, thanks, traffic, I say, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next item, and I must say, thank you to whomever insisted that we get the chief here. And I guess we did invite Pittman, but then he decided to way out.
On his way out, yeah.
That didn't work out. But really, it's two master's degrees.
When you're in your hometown of Mount Holyoke, you get
So it's a update on town council study committee. Donna and Pam. Donna and I had a meeting with, Joe Grouse, kitchen table, Joe Grouse. About a week ago.
Very productive. Basically, yeah, the concern that I raised was the fact that the verbiage about non-voting taxpayers was coming out of the proposed charter. But after we spoke, the three of us, Joe assured us that there won't be any issue. And actually, I have to find a paragraph that we did put in, we inserted instead of non-voting taxpayers. And it's just going to be everyone is able to speak at town council. But we do have bylaws already in existence, which discusses when our committee was proposed and amended and so forth. So that should stay with whatever is proposed. So the bylaws will stand.
That's good.
And we're also preparing, we're trying to get everything done for November, and I think I've mentioned that before. Because that's when the final, I guess, agenda is submitted to the annual town meeting. So we're going to be sending some of the materials that we've amended to Kay Paul, our legal counsel, so they can start reviewing it so that we can hopefully make the November deadline. Does anybody have any questions about that?
That would be great if we could keep this movement moving along.
We're
So,
doing our
yeah, that
best.
would be great to get it for next year for the 2025 annual town meeting in April or May.
We're doing
That
our
would be
best.
terrific,
I know, we realize it's important.
terrific.
Yes.
So-
Abby.
So my understanding is that if it's a citizen petition, it has to be in by November, but not if it's coming from the town, she wants real food. So I don't think you have to have it all done by November, get it on the town meeting ballot, because the town has till January.
That's interesting because both Curtis and Joe Grouse and the Collins, of course, they're saying November. So
Well, it's a
I'm
good
not.
target, but I just wanted you to know,
The
because
January
that's
is in.
exactly what actually.
But we don't know if the town is going to want to do that, because it's their jobs that are on the line,
Well,
so.
otherwise,
Well,
it's a citizen article.
That's the,
It's
that's
better.
another issue. That's.
November's a good, aim for November,
Who benefits?
right?
So citizen ones.
Ask the turkeys how they like to celebrate Thanksgiving, you know?
I think it should be safe with November.
They're going with
Not a-
November
right.
for
I was just
the
trying.
powers that be.
Just trying to update you. on
Thank you.
how it actually-
Yeah.
Don't panic at all, because they do, the FinCom starts reviewing all the citizens articles starting in November through January, and then they start the ones where the town has submitted them. So there were two deadlines for special town meetings.
But this was a citizen's article
Yeah,
to start with.
Yeah, Miss Curtis Barnes.
Keeps the pressure on the select board,
Absolutely, yeah.
that it's kind of like, you know, we'll have something in there whether or not you do something, and I don't know if that's the
Yeah,
plan
so
or
what's,
not.
did you have picked
Yeah.
somebody on the committee who would submit it as a citizen?
No, we have not done that yet. I would presume, I'm not sure that it would be Joe Grouse. Because Joe already was on FinCom
Right.
It
and.
might be Joe, or it could be Curtis again.
Could be Curtis again,
does it.
right? Curtis did it before.
That's what-
Yeah,
Curtis
and then
Absolutely.
you've got the Concom guy, who's done one also. Just,
Well, Jill Beath is on FinCom right now.
this is the employee, not the person on the committee.
Oh, the head of the natural resource department, yeah, Jeff called it, yeah.
I'm not sure. We
Yeah.
haven't gotten it yet. The next step is.
He did a complete one.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's something. I'll give to the secretary, I did two short backgrounders for Joe Grouse. On, you know,
when we
the
met.
statutory basis for our meeting and then what's in the charter about our committee. Because it turns out that the only thing in the charter about our committee is the right to speak at the town meeting.
Right,
And then, the committee itself is established in the bylaws, not in the charter. And our committee, like all the other committees that are bylaw committees, we'll need to have some very minor language changes. For example, instead of select board, you'll have town council, advise the town council rather than select board. And that's what we've discussed, and, I'm not sure exactly how that process will take place. But it will take place for every committee, not just us. What we're trying to do is, not stick out like a sore thumb, because it'll get people upset. When they're more concerned about, I live here and I should have all the rights. So. See, but I'll give these to you to include in the minutes, for the next step.
You know, I could see people objecting to that because if we do get the town council the way we're planning it, all of us will be able to go to every town council meeting and speak. And so what you're asking for is something, and there is no annual town meeting anymore after that. So that provision isn't needed. So I don't know why you think it's so important. I don't think it's so important.
Because there's an organized group who's been selected by the town manager. Right now it's whatever her title is, and we look at things, and it may be that when this group makes a recommendation, it might have, we tend to be fairly balanced.
Yeah,
Not,
when you
not,
speak,
you know,
people listen.
really out on a limb in some way. Even our balanced recommendations don't often always carry the day, but I think they've been very helpful. So I think that it's a matter of, you have an organization is recognized as part of, and other towns in our area, there are two of the bigger towns on the Cape. And don't ask me the name right, but Truro and one of the other ones. They have committees like this, and they've been reinvigorated because there's, in a way, we act as a shock absorber, and perhaps a way to get to the better
And
results.
skilled resources that can serve on committees.
Yeah.
They
Which
keep
we already
complaining
do.
We can
about-
do it today.
Right.
You keep asking for stuff we can do
I'm
today.
not asking for it. Yeah.
I mean,
The more that we're known, the more that
Okay.
we would get asked to, because they're always complaining about they cannot fill these committees. Always.
Yes, and Kathy, I
and
agree.
we're eligible for most of them, most of
Right.
them, not all, but most of
Right?
them.
But if they reached out and said.
And
"Hey,
we're not
would you-
volunteering
would
for
you
the
put
committee."
somebody on that?"
I
You
know.
could say no, or say yes, but yeah, just to have it on the back of their heads. That's
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and if I might just
Yeah.
add, also a consideration is, it's going to be decided at the ATM if we get this forward and the timetable, which we are really trying to do. We're trying to adhere to that. We really want those 12,000, 13,000 voters to vote for town council. So we don't want to create distractions.
so I think the most important thing, I'll get the stuff to Kathy and, you can read through it and see what we're telling them. But it's all within what you told me, Tom. What I find very, very frustrating about this whole process, is that the committee is going through the charter, article by article. And they've been through, what, 3 of the articles already, and yet we're not seeing, at least the public's not seeing the first draft of the rewrite of those 3 articles. And how do you make any real judgments about the whole process without understanding, I've been taken out of this part, but how do I go into some other part? So I make sure that I'm not losing anything here. And that my main concern is, right now, the charter does say rights of non-voting taxpayers in Article whatever, 3.
Here's Article 3.
And
2.6.
that will disappear because our only right was to be heard at town meeting. And if we no longer have a town meeting.
Right.
That's that. So we want to make sure that there's language someplace that makes it clear that I think the language I last heard you discuss was something like homeowners or something like that, which then will not be divided between resident and non-resident owners. But we're really talking about, I think, taxpayers. Residential taxpayers. And that's the entity, and I can't imagine a government anyplace not wanting to have a line of communication with the people that pay the taxes.
Agreed.
Yeah, there's no threat. I mean, there's a lot of perceived threat. There's no threat.
Yeah.
John,
So anyway, that's, I think they'd be pretty well.
are you any closer to coming to agreement on how representatives would be chosen?
Representative, you mean town council?
Yes.
No, not yet.
You
That
haven't
is a
discussed
point. Oh, yeah, we've been discussing it and the committee is sort of half and half. Because there are good reasons to have at large and there are good reasons to have a Sconset, a town, representative, councilman, council person. So we haven't decided.
Some.
Just
Yeah,
out
we're
of
talking about
curiosity,
mix also. The committee has not determined which way.
How much of the town budget does the voting taxpayer represent?
About 85%, 90%.
So 90% of the working budget of Nantucket comes from people who don't have a say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not correct.
Well, as I'm saying, I don't.
That's
know-
not correct, Donna.
It's not?
No, no,
Okay,
90% of the real estate taxes are paid by the non-voting taxpayers.
Exactly.
55% of the total budget.
But even so, whether it's
So
90% of the
So
real.
we pay
estate,
90%, but
55%.
But every time I've asked that question of Rob Rainey or the fellow who's in charge of finance for the town. Then when you add all the other taxes on hotels, on everything else, it turns out that we pay 88 or 90% of the real estate taxes and 55 or 60% at most
Yeah,
of the total revenues that the town.
Whatever the
But
numbers are.
it's still
Yeah, what
significant.
I'm saying is.
Plenty
to your
significant.
point, whatever the numbers are.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 55 and 90%
Right.
of the funding to this municipality comes from people who don't have a seat at the table.
Exactly.
And this is the only seat at the table they have.
But they don't have a vote,
Well,
but even if we don't have a vote, we want to have a voice.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but this is the only vehicle that allows you to have that voice.
But this is under the present system. The answer, it's a kind of really nothing is gonna change.
Yeah.
Okay. Accepting that we may streamline government, which is what I think our overall interests are. But because anybody can go to a select board meeting, they want,
Right.
they can speak and your ideas may end up in a select board, warrant article. And so there are ways to make noise, but at the legislative session, the only way is through this committee. And there is pending, but apparently not yet approved by the state AG, giving the moderator the discretion to hear from other non-voting taxpayers. And I'm told that even though it's not yet approved, she is, exercised that discretion. So the answer being, I think overall, that under the current system, this is the best way to get to the town meeting. Having been at the town meeting and spoken at the town meeting, if you're there trying to reverse something that's already has a set of steam, you just make some noise, basically.
But I will,
so we have to continue to work to prove to the people at the town meeting and who vote the value we can add, we have added, and we are adding to the town. We still aren't gonna get to vote here, and we don't even want that, but we want to be able to have as much influence as we can. And I think there are things we can continue to do on traffic, on parking, on other things to prove the value that the 87% of us or the 60% of us, whatever,
And
add
15 of us, in theory, sort of cross-representative of the average sort of, active type.
And Peter,
person.
can you follow up a little with Libby? Because she was very intrigued when she spoke to us last meeting.
Yeah.
About getting people from this group involved with specific areas where they can add expertise, add data, be supportive. And I think that's a way
Yeah,
we
I
could
still
really
need
be
to do that. I
valuable.
kind of-
Yeah.
I've been focusing on trying to get through this, the town council
Yeah.
committee issues.
Right.
Because we were kind of dead on arrival with our master plan of taking over the government.
But I do think like she was intrigued by the fact that here's a group of people that understand what's going on and can contribute, and she's short on bodies. Yeah, yeah, she's,
Yes.
yeah, she needs help.
That's the positive. The negative, she's never turned down anybody.
And obviously she would appreciate some assistance.
Absolutely.
And actually, I should get back to her because at the last meeting, when she spoke, I did offer to help, and she said, yes, I'll contact you.
Yeah.
So I'll just remind her. But as far as the town council, there's a big difference between the select board. This is what came out of the last meeting, because we meet every other week without fail. Is that the select board can make recommendations. But if we move to town council, they have responsibility. There's a big difference. There's a big difference. Whereas right now, the select board can actually just punt to the ATM.
They have to.
Well, okay, maybe.
Unless it's within their purview.
And the other thing, as far as any drafts coming to us and the public, where it's premature because now it has to go to the KP Law and they're gonna review it. And then maybe it can go out to it, but it would be great. But KPM or KP has to. That's where we are with this.
So that's where we are on that issue. And, I'd be interested to see what is actually written down on paper. So it's to be continued.
But you were very helpful, Peter. That was good. That was good meeting.
We'll see what happens. The update on STM was, a lot of is happening on short-term rentals. I guess it's articles was update on articles. The only article that we're following, I guess, is the really the articles on SPR. And does anybody, one of you want to update us on what is happening? And the basic issue is I guess the draft decision of the zoning board of appeals that may have a fairly large impact on us.
Well, there's the conflict of interest, there's been ethics file in the state by several of them. I think Andrew was one of them that spoke at the meeting, and then she said there were others she has to share. So
Which is ridiculous, but anyway.
The big file against each of the people.
Just another way to solve it.
I think they're gonna ignore that and just make their ruling.
They should,
And let that go where it goes.
they should.
I don't know, but that's my guess.
But it's also not gonna, I don't think it's gonna affect the short term, the special town meeting. I mean,
No.
you can't be, no decisions are gonna be made that are in advance of that anyway. People are gonna make a decision. I think right now, you can speak to this maybe better than I can, Kelly, but, there are five, technically there, 3 to 5 citizen articles that are still on. There is the compromise one, which the town is behind. How strongly they get behind it remains to be seen. I know they were trying to meet with the various other groups. I don't know if they did meet with you, Captain, in hopes that they can begin to coalesce. But there's a lot of movement. You've seen letters to the editor, Peter McCall,
Need to call him
I
back.
was hoping he would be here. I mean, I hope he would stay. Maybe he's gone to
I
talk
think
to,
you want.
you wanna talk to the police chief to get her behind.
Yeah.
What's behind, but I mean, that kind of stuff is, I mean, that would, I mean, if people believe the scare tactics that are coming out of there, that this is all gonna, continues to be, commercial. There's commercial people coming in here to take our town. I mean, if you read the warrant, that's the one thing that they've been able to accomplish,
Right.
is to cut that out. But you wouldn't know that from the letters to the editor.
I know.
It's frustrating. It's very frustrating. So it's gonna be the same as usual. Who can get the vote out there? And it's a two-thirds vote.
That's the critical part, I think, is, are people like tired of it, are they gonna bother? Are they gonna, with the same number of people come out, well, as they did, so I think that's the difficult part. And then you're, getting that to truly what that middle is the hard part. If you get, what is the middle, who's in the middle, which of those rules are in the middle? Which ones are, and if there's someone who doesn't like that one rule and they're gonna vote no, they like the rest of it, then you've lost that passage. So it's gonna be, I have no idea. what's gonna happen.
I think it's unlikely he'll be able to get it 2/3.
No.
And it will be back exactly where we are today
Wild West.
with no rules. And Matt Fee's gonna say, we don't open the floodgates, there are no gates. People can do anything except corporations, So it's a shame, all of these people writing these nasty letters. Right? All that means is that there are too many factions. And once again,
Still
we
use
won't
that.
have the people at the meeting in sufficient number to be able to get anything 2/3, so.
I don't think real estate people are behind it.
Well,
If they
there,
don't vote for it, then it pass. I don't know that, there's their silence on it. It's nobody putting out answers. So just see what
our
happens.
next meeting is what, the 20, what's that?
14.
What is it, the date, we're gonna meet, then it's
Before-
just before.
Just
well,
before.
We may know more then, it's just gonna be before
The
the
14th,
The meeting's on the 17th,
Our meeting is,
the special town meeting is on the
okay,
14th.
our next meeting is the
The 14th.
14th.
Yes.
So
Kathy, can
do we
you-
need a meeting before the
Well,
17th?
No.
Well, 14th
The 14th is when
14th is the meeting on the 14th.
Yeah, but my point, my question is, which really is out of order here, but, do we need to do anything
Yeah, that's
else
what
before the special town meeting?
No.
I don't think so, and so that, raises the issue for me. I'm gonna be I think in a wedding in Italy on the 14th, and so I'm,
Gonna be in North Carolina, Zoom in.
I'll be here.
Oh.
Kathy,
Maybe.
quick question on STR. Are people still registering their rentals, or is that all come to a halt until the?
People registering if they can.
If they-
Still haven't fixed some of the issues.
Oh,
with it,
okay.
So I can't get it. It doesn't, the insurance part doesn't work, so I can't.
So they haven't taken anything from the Mass Tax Connect system and tried to
I've
merge
not
it
heard
over?
anything up
Okay.
about it. Okay, they should have somebody update the select board or something, but I think they don't have any more meetings. So They don't, they meet.
Select board.
Yeah. Every 2 weeks, yeah, the 2-week break, so. So yeah, so I was approached by Jim Sulzer and Tucker Holland just to see what I was thinking about this, so I shared some thoughts with them about, if they wanted to get it passed. These are the things that were the concern, I thought would lose them more votes than gain, so. That's just my opinion, but,
I mean.
and they don't wanna mess with it, they don't wanna go tweaking it or changing the wording. But it's possible they might just say, let's get rid of this one rule. And that's some people that I could understand that if they chose, if they had someone to.
That's the other thing is getting something on the books, but would be a huge start. And then
Zoning would be,
Something,
something in zoning.
and then build from that. But but again, if people are, scare tactics are such that people are afraid.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yes.
Well, I tend to think that the CBA decisions, because if they will be presidential, and if they're appealed and not reversed, that, I think, while they only in theory apply to 2 properties or something, they're precedential, and, it will be applied across the board until something else happens. So
But that's only, that case is about one,
Right.
one particular rental. It doesn't necessarily have to apply to anybody else,
And it's that rental 3 years ago.
which is why the ethics complaint is ridiculous. You know, if you listen to the ethics complaint, the only people could be on the zoning board are lifeguards and cooks. Because lifeguards and cooks, because no one could possibly have a conflict unless you go into the restaurant where the cook is cooking, or you swim on a beach where there's a lifeguard, then it could be a potential conflict. Otherwise,
But you know, you see that, and, you know, knowing it's brought up now rather than way back then, it's a last resort, and, you say, well, they're kind of running out of arguments. But when in reading the draft decision, there are standards that they lay out, they're a little bit, you know, loose, but, they're standards, and I think that because it's a zoning issue, they're gonna have to apply the same standards going forward.
no, this is a fact-based decision. The opinion by the town council was brilliantly written in draft, right? I thought it was well written to specifically talk about this family and their use of the house.
Yeah, but I think the point is the criteria they're applying there.
Yeah,
making
but
those
then
facts
you'd have to do
decisions,
that
then-
with every
Exactly.
single
Right.
challenge.
Right, but it does, look, if it goes
Yeah.
in favor of, it goes as the draft opinion
Yeah,
sets forth now, that will, every little bit helps in that sense, and I
Yeah.
think you could,
so you can't be here the 14th and you're not gonna be here.
Not in
I
person,
might not be able to be here the 14th
Maybe
either.
on the
Should we,
phone.
should we meet on the 7th instead?
Um,
I'm gonna be over there, it's my first Saturday in south of France.
Oh, okay. We don't feel bad.
Could meet beforehand, just in case there's any last things.
I'll be here, so I can do it here if anybody wants.
Could we move that
Yeah,
meeting
we
to the
could do it
7th?
On Zoom, what's wrong?
I'll be on Zoom actually, because I'm leaving in a couple.
It's fine with me, and I may be able to tune in, I may not be able to. 10 o'clock here will be, 6 hours.
Four.
Oh,
It's just like a cocktail, you just have.
No, you know, I will still be like a bar
Oh, well.
restrictor, probably.
We talked about that, but we won't get this.
Well,
place.
For lunch.
We won't get any place.
You're right, you're right.
The town is using it, that's
Didn't
why.
even think about that.
Yeah.
Another issue would be, I don't think we need a speaker at that
No.
point, just sort of
Catch up.
a business meeting. We'll catch up with, you know, what's going on with town council and things like that. So
We
that'll
have
be
one
good.
more meeting after that. Thanks.
So it would be in October.
Yeah.
Is that, if it's September, yeah, October 5th.
Over fifth, okay.
October.
So I don't know if we want to go speak with that, or we just want to talk about STM.
Fall out.
We'll figure it out. But if we wanted a speaker,
Just so I.
whoever you're not worn out. so-
Lori and Lori, the class director. Leslie.
Leslie,
Snell.
Leslie.
Unless, no,
Planning director?
Yeah, because that goes to all the conversation about traffic and roads
but she's got everything.
yeah, she's everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mike was-
Yeah, and she's been there long enough now in terms of her new role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And zoning also. forever.
And, you know, he was the director of
You can respond with.
for the noise bylaw several years ago. And he was clearly, at that time, she was under very strict instructions. To do all of this to be done. And she's been really very, very central to a lot of the stuff that's very interesting.
Well, can we first decide whether we're gonna meet?
I'd like to hear from somebody from the steamship authority. You know, we all live here and everything that we get comes over on that boat. And they are totally screwed up this year. Monday, they had 240 people trying to get back to the other side because the boats aren't running. Now, I'm told that.
Well, that was it. Damage.
Been back from March.
Fast
The fast ferry.
Fast ferry,
Thursday, Friday.
when they whacked that ferry into the breakwater
Mhm.
years ago, cracked that hole, the hole keeps opening up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, we ought to get somebody here to tell us what they're gonna be doing in the future, because everything that we have, we depend on coming over.
No, it's guy, no, it's,
Is it- is it-
what's the name's brother?
Rob Rainey, Rob Rainey.
Rob Rainey was the
Rennie's
representative.
Son.
That's Randy, no, it's Rob, it's.
Rob is he's the tax assessor and he's the tax assessor and he's also
Yeah, we-
the representative on the steamship authority.
Rob Rainey.
Rob Rainey.
Yeah, that's Libby's brother.
Yeah,
That's Libby's brother.
Cliff Rainey, he used to be on. His
Used to
father.
be on it.
It is.
What did we do?
It's like the King of England. It's hereditary.
Amplified noise bylaw.
Oh, okay. Well, I was reading
Anybody
anything
else
about
has
that.
any, we're hitting more noise movement on whatever.
Nothing from the civic association, but if I looked at that noise bylaw, it then started discussing this for outdoor public spaces.
Yeah.
And you have to get kind of. That would probably pass easier than if you talk about all
Just
outdoor.
all out there.
Because then you're gonna say my painter likes to play music when he paints, and now you're telling me I can't. I think the issue came up with Tom Nevers. and
Yeah, what happened,
more about
who was on top of that, what happened on?
Going into. great
So I
point.
can make some further editorial changes. Yes.
Well, don't you already have to get a permit if you're doing an outdoor event? No?
Not an outdoor event, just
Yeah.
people.
Oh, you're talking about that, yeah. I mean, if you are having an actual event, you do get permits.
Yeah.
So you're just talking more about like the guy at Tom Nevers with the
Right,
speakers.
great point too.
Yeah.
That seems to be an issue.
Really?
People who put out speakers
Fish.
and so.
Doesn't it scare the fish?
Some like classical music and some like,
We had it right here during this meeting.
So I do-
Somebody-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a car?
I mean, but some of the stuff I read through, and I don't know if it was from the other town where it talked about if you owned a musical instrument, I mean, it was getting a little
Yeah.
extreme. I mean, one of the beauties of the island is the person who comes out on their porch and plays the guitar at night, or, you know, just that kind of
So what
And
is your
that's not
instrument of choice?
the artistic stuff that can go on, like people collaborating, et cetera.
What about downtown, can you use an amplified?
He has a permit.
Yeah, you must with the strum.
Well, my daughter busked downtown. She used to do music on the streets, but they never could amplify. They just
Now they're
used to be able
they're
to
amplifying.
acoustic, and you have to be a certain distance away from certain buildings and, yeah.
Could we, if I might, going back to Lou's suggestion about a representative from the steamship, I think that's a very good conduit to kind of bring up the idea about, here are the traffic rules, here's Nantucket tradition. Maybe you could encourage them to pass out brochures about, now you're coming to Nantucket, this is what to expect, or this is what we appreciate.
We could raise that at the meeting, but well, you start someplace, the steamship authority, you don't start the High Line.
Yeah.
To deal with. Okay. The current issues of concern for non-resident taxpayers, this has been on every time, and we somehow never reach it until we get toward the end of the meeting. Early on before the meeting, we were discussing, it probably would be good for us to develop a policy list. I mean, we know, for example, that, we will virtually speak to anything that treats non-resident taxpayers different from residence taxpayers. And we made it in sort of a list of things that we either have addressed with the select board in the past that either have happened or have not happened, and things that we want to bring up in the future. And it almost is a checklist of, an internal checklist of how are we doing? Are things that we are interested in getting through to people who can do something about them? And are we doing any good other than spending our time here on Saturday mornings? I think that, sort of a good idea. And which forces us to look at what are the issues that are of importance to us. And I know there are a number of issues of importance where we're just not gonna get any place, and no matter how hard we try, we're not gonna get any place, that maybe they don't belong on the list. The example would be taking large trucks off the roads during the high season. That's just not gonna happen, no matter what. But what are the things that are that we're truly interested in, and we think it's a benefit for non-residents and for residents.
Parking garage.
Yeah,
That's
park the
where we
garage
have
downtown would be a good idea, a good example. Not suggesting that we need to get the answer to this thing today, but I think we would organize our efforts in a better way than the sort of ad hoc, way we're doing things.
Yeah, this is a small issue, but two people who are non-resident taxpayers who are kayakers have come to me and said, there's no place to bring a kayak downtown. You have to have a mooring to have your kayak. And it used to be up until 2 or 3 years ago, down by the harbor master's office, there was adequate space for a kayak. And if you have to lug a kayak by car every time you're going to use it to go downtown, you're just going to exacerbate the traffic problem. So it would seem to me that's a pretty easy fix. Just have a space down by the harbor master where you can have a kayak without having to have a mooring.
There's plenty of kayaks over by Sales Beach. Over
The-
past Sales,
But those are rental kayaks.
no, not the, if you go beyond that, beyond Francis Street.
Well, I don't know. I'm just,
Is that yacht club property?
No, it's beyond.
Is
it's
there a
beyond,
rack,
I think-
like a town rack? Cause there's
No,
a,
they
well-
just put people on the ground. There are
Oh,
like
okay.
again,
dozens and dozens.
I'm not an expert on it, but
No.
apparently
But
there,
maybe
there
you
is
can
no
help.
town rack for kayaks.
For
Unless
downtown.
you, for downtown,
Yeah.
unless you have a mooring.
okay. Cause
And you
maybe that's
can't-
something to bring up with
Yeah, I
the
was gonna
harbor
say, and you
master,
can't
cause
get a
there's a
mooring
rack you
unless
can
you
help
get
make out. in
X
Columbus
number of
Harbor.
years.
Part of public
Yeah.
access.
Yeah.
sidewalk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So I
Exactly.
bring it up. It might be an easy fix.
Yeah.
You know, but at least the,
Pavement.
yeah, cause they have town racks in other locations.
yeah, no, they
As
do like.
long as you get there early enough.
Not
Yeah.
in Hawaii.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
over
mine
in
was- but
Columbus
there's none
Harbor there,
downtown,
yeah.
except for the one you mentioned, which
Which
is.
is,
Trees
I-
and
if you drive
Yeah,
past
absolutely.
Yeah, no,
Sales
I-
Beach.
Because
there's a-
I
a
will
little-
say, if you don't
the
get your
road
kayak
goes a
out
little
there
right,
every
and
day.
that's three people who would-
It was just a suggestion.
Yeah.
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 When I first started with this, I kind of had in my mind, and I don't know why, but I thought we were a representative, kind of a group. We represented the non-voters. But I don't see us at all in that mode. Because I've never seen us do any asking of our constituents what they're looking for. I mean, we've never put out a survey, we've never said anything in the paper about, you know, we're glad to hear from you if there are issues for non-voters or whatever, but we're really not a representative committee.
I think we are representative of, non-voting taxpayers.
Well, there's 15 of
Who have an interest in meeting on Saturday morning in considering, issues. Basically, what I've seen is we consider issues of importance to the island, particularly importance to us, as they arise.
in our
This
opinion.
is not a sort of single issue, advocacy group. It's broader based.
Well, it's a single issue for the 15 people involved. The question is, how do you consider yourself a representative of non-tax, non-voting taxpayer? If
Maybe more
you're
people
not,
are coming, more
Because
people
you
know.
chose
about
to
it.
do that by
They're
the
reading
town
about
manager.
it. Yeah.
I think that's the answer.
I know.
And there's a statute that says that there will be a group of 15 people, and you may have a quorum of a majority of those actually appointed and serving, who will meet and make recommendations to the select board, of items of importance to non-voting taxpayers. That's the rationale for this group, and, that's.
do we have,
But-
It's an operating.
but
I
do we
think-
have constituents?
But the point I think that's being made is there a way for us to do a survey of the non-voting taxpayers, the several thousand, I don't know how many there would be. I mean, we don't have any budget. Could we get a budget?
No.
No,
We don't do this drill.
I think
List
the only
a
way
list
we
is
would
easy.
know
We
is-
can get.
This is from the
A list we can get
Well, you can't separate, we're all taxpayers, how are you gonna separate, it? You know, we're all taxpayers, you're not gonna be able to separate. it.
Well, you're all members of a civic
Exactly.
association, and you go to those meetings and you listen to the
Right.
newsletter. You're, at every meeting you can listen to, from the select board to traffic safety to, that's up to us to do the research and read the Inky and currents and talk to your neighbors, but get a more global sense than your personal opinion. But no, we don't represent a group like a civic association represents an area. And that's not our charter, but I think several of you have had big jobs in other places that you bring that knowledge with you. A lot of you are lawyers.
Well,
But-
that's dangerous.
But I think the idea is you just have to be.
Notwithstanding that.
To your civic association and Nantucket Civic League meetings, they share information and you're the eyes and ears that hopefully you as a non-resident taxpayer bring that perspective, but with the knowledge that you've done a wide range of research just by paying attention to what goes on at.
Well, what
county
Steve's doing is,
commissions.
what Steve is doing with his committee is
Yeah.
also broadcasting this, and people can
Which is
hopefully are attending and coming and raising issues that we're not raising.
And they have, which I.
Well, we
think
had
is-
10 people today. who,
That's huge.
we still have one, but,
Thank you, Virginia.
And there have been times then when I was chair, I had a letter from me to the Inky, which talked about our charter, telling everyone that we're here. And then Peter wrote a letter just a year ago, which also appeared in the Inky. So if people are paying attention and they are non-voting taxpayers, they know there's a way to get their voice. And there is no mailing list, by the way. The tax bills go out to LLCs, they go out to payment functions. They would absolutely,
Be really hard.
there's no way to actually do a survey of non-voting
Well,
taxpayers.
you could do it and whatever, you wouldn't hear from the LLC, you'd still hear from the.
You may or may not hear from
And
any.
if you do a survey, if you only hear from 50 people, that's 50 people who made comments.
I'd be very surprised, I think it's possible, that we have not touched, we don't touch upon the top 5, if not top 10 issues that are paid across the board. And they just, if there are issues you know of that you think people are, that we haven't raised, I just don't know.
But-
You
but-
can
but-
also
but to-
look at the map, the area plans that are on the town website, so you can see, I think there are 8 of them now that have been published. So you can get a sense from what they've looked at strategically, what they need for their area, which is also very helpful. I'm
There,
sorry.
there is a role for us in both the short-term rentals and the town council issue, but it seems to me, maybe to Patty's point, in the last year, that's other than the speakers or beyond the speakers, that's really all we've talked about. And many of the issues that we talk about do not apply to non-voters any more than traffic is an issue for us, for the full-time residents who vote here and for the tourists. So that's an issue that is of concern to all of us and a quality of life issue. And I think maybe we've touched on it a couple meetings, we ought to pick an issue, whether it's traffic or parking or something. And there are, 50,000 people who live here who we might be able to get some expertise from people who are non-voters to help us solve a problem that's really a problem for everybody, not specifically for the non-voters.
The traffic is clearly something that we've addressed from time to time. And the last time we addressed it in any meaningful way, I think, was when there were plans to do additional rotaries in turning lanes. And it got all the way to town meeting, and then the 92 people who don't want to spend money or don't want a tree cut down, dashed the ball.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to be interested in those sorts of things, because they're the only simple solutions they're not really solutions, they're band-aids, that may be helpful. Yeah.
Peter, I was going to say, when you were talking, Steve, I think that's a good point, but I think we should be judicious about it. We should choose one topic and create a plan. Okay, this is what we're going to do, but that requires time and effort on our part, because if we're going to say we want to address something as a committee, then we have to go through with it. And then we have to show success. This is what we've done. And we are going to go to select board, or we're going to bring it to ATM after speaking to Sarah Alger, that sort of thing. But just to kind of, I see what you're saying, and Patty also. So either we do something or we don't do anything, really.
Two quick thoughts. One, we talked about, and Libby had raised this, we talked about following up, which is, and I think important to help her and to help us by getting a list of expertise across the board from non-voting taxpayers. How do you do that? You know, I think if we don't have a list, it's maybe something that we do put in the AP or a red letter to the editor or whatever, suggest asking that, because and that may be a way also of same time, I can encourage people to raise issues that they have. That's number one, we need the list of expertise. Second, I think I'm a little wary of just sort of saying picking a project. I think parking is important, whether it's more important than anything else, I don't know. We do have some expertise. We've talked about it. If we have the time and effort and people are prepared to put the effort in, let's do it. But there are, issues come up at random times, and we need to be prepared to address them as they come up. And just not say, and not just do something because we need it to do so.
Well, along with that, either we can talk about it, or what I hear is, do we want to do something?
But what?
It doesn't matter.
Well,
We
we
just
are doing
choose-
something. We are doing things. We're doing a lot of things right now. Question is, do we want to do more? Is there some specific project we want to do more of?
That's it.
No,
I
no,
don't
no,
do
what are
it
we
if we
doing?
want to.
What are we doing?
Yeah,
We're dealing with the STR, we're dealing with the town council, we're, dealing with a whole
These
bunch of
are-
issues.
And actually, that was something I wanted to mention. One thing we can do is, as individuals of this committee, is we can volunteer on other committees, bringing our perspective as non-voting taxpayer. And that's why I wanted to do town council.
Gary does.
And that's why you probably wanted to do STR, and you're doing council, coastal resilience. So that's another way of doing it too. But as far as our credentials, I'll be happy to do it, but they already have our credentials when we were appointed. We had to include them in our thing. I don't think that, I don't see what that will do for anybody who's a non-voting taxpayer.
No, it's not credential.
I don't think she was open
We're
meetings
talking about
just
expertise.
us.
No, we're talking about getting people in the community. There are a lot of retired people here who have served in all sorts of amazing capacities in their private lives. Trying to come up with a way to organize that. I mean, that would be a hell of a service to this town if we could figure out a way to do that. And I'm happy to try to work with somebody on that. The only thing that comes to mind immediately is to advertise for it, always get the word out, say, hey, this is something we're doing, and see if people will write in.
But what are we doing?
But
No, you're not listening. Excuse me.
We're trying
We're trying to get that list together.
We're trying to establish a list of expertise.
I think we got.
Expertise
all right,
that's
we-
available to the town.
If we wanted to set up a
That's
consulting
what I-
business.
Okay, no. I think we're getting in a rabbit hole here. I mean, you made a
Actually-
comment last meeting where you had a colleague who ran all kinds of parking garages
Yeah.
around the country. That type of expertise in some inventory fashion could be applicable to this larger traffic issue. And if that person is a resident of Nantucket, a non-voting taxpayer, why don't we leverage that to help solve the problem? And that may not be the only one, but I agree with you. Everybody that's a voting, non-red, whatever the hell we call it. AC. And
NVT.
yeah, I know, that acronym is gonna take me a while to get used to. Everybody who has a summer house down here probably has another job or another profession.
Right.
Or had, and they have skill sets that could be applicable. So I think an inventory of those, even if it's limited, may not be a bad thing.
I think Libby had a very
Yeah.
direct list that she would love help with.
Yeah.
Waste management would be something
Yeah.
else since the dump.
Yeah.
that Contract is up in here. So things like that, that you can be highly specific going, we're looking for a work group to study the issue under.
Gather data.
Gather
give it to
data,
them.
you know, and give it to, Libby can set the parameters and we can make. the
I think it's,
prediction.
I think the only way to do it is
That's
to
it.
send a letter to the editor. You know, I don't think anything.
I think to
Yeah, we are,
No, not to Libby.
Not to
no, to the level.
Okay, like,
You-
we have the
you-
first
what
data
she
that,
needs, But you need.
yeah, we
You
need
need-
we need to have.
Yeah, but it should be
areas.
specific, not
not
anybody with
everyone.
expertise in anything.
No,
If we gotta have, these are the things we're interested in working on this coming year,
And you
whether it
bring-
be waste management
Can
issues
you bring a
or.
skill to that?
Yeah.
Although it would be nice, it would be nice to know what the expertise is, it's sort of.
So I've heard about,
But-
I've
but-
heard
but-
about, I have a list of 10 different things
Okay,
here, that we might consider doing one or more of them. Which would, one is a list of the expertise of people in this committee. Two is really, an idea, from the committee members as to, are you interested in serving on other committees? And in addition to this one, devote some more time. Because I hear that, and that's something they constantly say, and that they, constantly are holding against, in a way, non-voting taxpayers. Well, if you wanna have a say in things, get involved, there are ways to get involved. And it might not be you, it might be your neighbor who's more interested in getting involved. And then sort of an aspiration quality of life list is kind of, what are we all in favor of? And which is not a bad idea. Many, many years ago, before a lot of folks here were on this committee, I can't remember, it was the person who was the head of the land bank or whatever at that time, met with us.
Eric,
And I just.
Eric Kavitsky, yeah.
Yeah, and he basically said, if I were you, what I'd be doing is looking at the quality of life issues that affect non-voting taxpayers, and
Like noise and
improvement
parking.
here. And whenever I think of those issues, really affects everybody, not just for non-voting
Yeah,
taxpayers.
true.
But we could, there are a number of things, but what I'm seeing is a list of, it's almost like a to-do list, that we would develop, which might have, all of these things on it. And then at the end of a year or 2 years, we say, well, what have we actually done? To realize what our goals were. If our goal is to have, I don't know, is anybody else on another committee other than Gary?
yeah, but I don't think that, I mean, I personally don't think that
You
should be.
did, you.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't think, unless, what, I don't think it's our job to have our people be placed in all these other committees. People are interested in a particular area, they ought to do it. Now, if there is a quality of life issue that affects us across the board, like SDR, which is or the town council thing, yeah, then we can urge the government to take one of us who's involved and is knowledgeable. But otherwise, yes, if you're interested, get it,
I have a rare disagreement with you on this. That is, my experience, having watched you and Bill on the STR committee, having watched Donna on this other committee, I haven't watched Gary, but in order to play this game here, this game meaning being involved in, it's not a game, but being involved in a meaningful way in the governance of Nantucket, you need to be an insider.
we're saying the same thing.
And being on these committees gets you, they know your name. They start to learn that you have good ideas and you make good contributions. And, doing it from here at our 50,000 foot level is difficult. Unless you have a guy like Bill Sherman who's been in and out and everything for years, and was a trusted advisor. In other words, how do we become trusted advisors in a broader way than just what we're trying to become a trusted advisor.
Okay. I think we're saying the same thing. What I'm suggesting is that for those matters that are of significant interest to the committee, then by all means, we ought to encourage people here to get involved. But there are many other areas, you know, whether it's the cemetery commission or whatever else, and they're all over the place here. Hey, it's great, get involved, but that's not something we need to be worried about. As a committee, it seems to me. So I would focus it more on those areas that we have concern with, and that as, you know, that we can make a difference.
You know, I have a time issue.
Yeah, I got it.
Me too, I do too. So, look, when we finish up, I think it's had a reasonably decent discussion of this to be continued. Do we?
What's the next meeting?
The next meeting, is it gonna be 9:14 now? Is that?
Should we meet the 7th or the 14th? Because the 14th, not a lot of people are gonna be here.
9/7.
We want more people in present.
matter.
Let's meet on, I'll go vote for 9/7,
7th, yeah.
9/7, okay. And then the meeting after that, it's gonna be 10,
October 5.
Right.
10/5.
What was the second meeting, Peter?
October 5th.
October 5th.
That's probably gonna be too long.
And so it'll be steamship authority.
I'll be here, but I don't know, I'm not taking on responsibility.
Yeah, I know, I'm flying back that day here, but I'm hearing time. so.
And then I think we really do need, if we can squeeze in the coastal.
Oh, by the way, there's something I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send, I'm gonna ask the people from Leah to give me or to send to either Peter or to all of us. I want you to see what we have presented to the select board is a summary of what the Coastal Advisory Commission did in the first quarter of this year and in the second quarter of this year. Both reports have been made, they're public, they're on the website, but I'm sure nobody here saw them. We saw them, you saw them, right? Anyway, I would like everyone on the committee at least to see, and to the extent that you have questions about it, I can answer some of them, or we can have Leah join our meeting whenever, and schedule her to do so, especially on Zoom, right, like that. But that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make sure each of us get a copy of the presentations that have already been made, so there's no conflict of interest law, because the public has seen them already. They were on the select board agenda in the packet. But the first quarter of this year and the second quarter of this year, and so you'll see a lot of the stuff that, whether coastal resilience districts or all the other stuff we're doing.
Okay,
So no publicity for the September 7th meeting, since there's no speaker.
I don't think there's gonna be any speaker, but I've got this steamship authority.
Oh, for the next one.
It could be for the 5th, or I could also try to, so. But I think we want a shorter meeting, don't we?
So no Leslie Snell, you know. Leslie Snell would be not no Leslie Snell.
That's the planning board lady.
We probably favor the.
Well, we-
At least now.
That's.
Oh, no,
the-
Planning director.
But she touches a huge area.
Yeah, that would be a major discussion.
It's-
Oh, we're gonna do that.
We adjourn without voting. We lose our quorum, we can't adjourn.
Okay,
You know, yeah.
I move to adjourn.
that's adjourned. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Yes, that's right on time.
Yes.
Yeah. Second,
Second.
Second.
favor, yeah.
Favor.
Thanks.
By the way, you know,
Not really good.
I have a thought about
Yeah, my wife listens to it.
about the housing thing generally, you know.
She gets along.
Even though we have a problem on the island.
After we talk.
It's a problem nationwide. Right. It's a nationwide problem. You read all about these people, they can't afford to buy a home.
Talk to the Chamber of Commerce. They can't, people can't come here to work because they have no place.
I know.